Hello and welcome to another Wolfman Analytics DAX Let's Play video. Today we're going to be looking at SUMX and how to apply some filter conditions to that function. It's a Let's Play video, so we're just going to dive into a data model. We're going to create some measures, we're going to have a play around, see where it takes us, and if we can find some time, we'll do some performance analysis against a couple of different types of filters used within the function. So let's drop over to our screen. Okay, so here we have a list of dates. If I just take a quick look at the data model, just to familiarize ourselves with what we will be measuring. We have a date table, custom date table rather, which has a one-to-many relationship with our order header table based on the delivery date. Sorry, the date it was ordered. And that links through with a one-to-many relationship through to our order lines. So our expanded table stretches from our order lines back through to our custom date table. So we're able to iterate over the dates within the custom date table and aggregate the sales value in our order lines table here as part of our functions. So what does all this mean? Let's jump back to our report view. We're going to create a series of functions, or rather a series of measures. So starting off with SUMX in its simplest form, just a simple SUMX calculation with no filter conditions applied, and it will be applying the calculation within the row context that we're applying in this table. And then we'll move on to some filter conditions that are a little bit more complex, but only mildly more complex, where we're changing the filter conditions within the row context. So we're applying some transition, some additional filter context. So looking at this date table at the moment, I think we can apply some other rules as well. So looks like we've got far too many dates in there. So I think it would be interesting to only apply the measures to this year's data. So we can start with our first measure and apply conditions. So we're only returning this year's information. Now, I'm going to be applying the filter conditions all within the measure itself. So just going back to my screen for a second. And so we could apply some general filter conditions on the page using the filters pane in Power BI. I'm going to avoid doing this just purely for the fact that I want to keep all of our conditions in one place. So we'll keep everything in the DAX code itself. Purely for that reason. You may have different preferences. Everyone has different preferences when it comes to these things. You may want a global filter that applies to everything on a particular page, in which case, yes, the filters pane in here, and you can apply a filter condition across everything that sits on this page. Yeah, I completely understand why you would want to use that function within Power BI. But like I said, for the purposes of this video, we won't be applying any filter conditions using the filters pane. Okay, so to start with, we will be creating a new measure. Let's zoom in. So let's call this M1 sales value equals, so all we're doing is applying SUMX to the current row context for the current year. So we're going to need to find out what the current year is and then apply that as a filter condition within SUMX. So first step is to open a variable block, and we will identify the current year. So we need to return today's date, and we just need the year from today's date. So we can do that with, let's call our variable v current year is equal to year. So we use the year function to return a year from the date. So it will return the year as a numeric value from the date. So the date is today, which will return today's date. Let's just test this. So let's close the variable block. Oops. We get a syntax error because I haven't returned anything after we've closed the variable block. So we want to return v current year. Okay. Let's add that to our table. And here we can see in our measure, we are returning 2023 against each row in our table. Just a test for the moment. So let's go back to our measure. And now let's create an additional variable inside our variable block. Let's keep things consistent. Everything that's a function will be a capital. Okay, so the result of the calculation we're going to do, so we'll call this v result, is going to be on SUMX. So we're doing a sum. So the first part of our function is to return the table. So our net sales value is within our sales order line, which in this database, the sales order line, actually on this, I've gone through each table as part of the import process, or rather the modeling process, and I've alphabetized each of the tables from A through to G in this case, just purely for my own head, it gives it some kind of order, and where we've got when we start typing in our measures, I know that G in this case is for our order lines. And you might say, oh, well, you could just type O and then it would start auto. The IntelliSense would return the table just from typing in the table name. But where you've got multiple tables with similar names, that could become a problem. So just as part of my practice, I put a letter at the start of each of the tables. Obviously, that can be problematic if you've got many, many tables. But in this case, where we've got a small number of tables, it makes life mildly more easier. So the table that we're returning is G_order lines. I'm not going to apply the date filter at this stage. I just want to return the SUMX of the net sales value within the sales order lines. So SUMX in G order lines, and we want to return the net sales value. So IntelliSense is showing us all of the fields that come within that table. I want to return the net sales value, and I'm going to close that SUMX. Okay. So I'm going to return the result of this. Nothing has changed in our table at the bottom, and that's because we're still returning the current year, the values from the variable current year. So I'm going to change this to vResult. So after our variable block is closed, I want to return vResult. And some values have appeared in our table at the bottom of the screen. So let's zoom out, and we can see that values have appeared for every single one of our months. But we only want the values for the current year. So let's go back to our measure. And let's apply a filter. No. We don't want to apply a filter. Let's use calculate table. Calculate table. So we're going to create a table, and we're going to apply our filter conditions in calculate table. So calculate table. So from our dim date custom date table, we have dim date year, equals our variable, which is v current year from above. I'm going to close calculate table and still return the net sales value. So just having a going back through this code, we've changed SUMX. So the table G_lines, the order lines table, to apply a filter condition to that table, so it only returns items for the current year. We've inserted a function called calculate table, which will allow us to apply a filter condition to the table. We've added the dim date year, so that is linked. So if we think about our expanded table for a second, bear with me. Think about our expanded table for a second. Our expanded table from the order lines includes our custom date table. So we follow the lineage back. We can follow it back through to the custom date table and apply a filter in the custom date table that will take an effect on the order lines table. And we're applying current year. So I think we're happy with that. Let's press enter and zoom out. And we can see here that all of the previous years to 2023 have disappeared, and we are left with this year's data. Fantastic. It is fantastic. Right, on to the next measure. So let's think about something that's a little bit more fun than just applying a date condition to this to SUMX. So we could apply a in fact, let's look at our model. let's take a look at our model and see what else we could apply a filter on. So we've got customers, we've got stores, and we've got products. Let's start with customers of a certain age. Right, okay then. So this should be relatively... No. Let's go with product. Let's go with product colors. Yeah, let's go with product colors. So let's find out what colors we've got in our product colors. I'm going to add a new table. I want to add product colors to the table. And we can see here, these are all of the product colors that are contained within that table. And actually, while we're here, I'm going to apply the measure that we created, which was our M1 sales value, to the product colors table. Okay. Zooming in. The reason why I'm zooming in is, take note that all of our colors, the value, which is 16,801,584, is a match to our date table, 16,801,584. So now we know that those figures are the same. We have confidence that in our values from both sides of the table, and when we start to apply some filter conditions to this table based on the colors, we know that we've got confidence that the data is reading the data correctly for both tables. Okay, so let's create a new measure. So our new measure is going to be called M2, and we'll call this sales by color blue and red. I don't like the name of that, but for the purposes of this exercise, it will do. So we're going to apply pretty much the same conditions, or exactly the same conditions as our first measure in M1, but we will be setting some additional conditions based so we can pull out just blue and red from the product table as well. So let's go back through. If I just quickly retype out what we put into our first measure. So we had var v current year was equal to the year for today. And then our second variable was var v result is equal to SUMX, where we have a calculate table referencing our order lines table, where dim date date year was equal to our v current year variable, v current year. Close that, and we are returning the net sales value, and then we are closing our variable block, and we are returning the result. So I'm going to add that variable to our table, and the results should be exactly the same, which they are, which is great. So now let's go back to our code. So we want to apply another filter condition, and we can do that within our calculate table on here. So I'm going to put another row after our first condition, and we want to just thinking, we want to only pull back the colors blue and red from the product table. Which one was the product table? Just have a quick look in our model view. Yep, that's going to return an error because I left a comma in there, but let's just go back in here. So it's B underscore product. Let's go back to our measure. So this was B product color is equal to blue or B underscore product color is equal to red. So the double pipe indicates an OR in this calculation here. So we're saying B underscore product color equals blue or B underscore product color equals red. So let's close that function off. Don't need another curly bracket because we've already got it. So let's look at the result of that. Okay. So the value that's been returned is 1,317,895. So we can verify that value by looking at this table here, which has got our colours in. So we returned blue, which is 742,000. We also returned red, which is 575. So 575 comes to, yeah, I think those two come to there or thereabouts. Where's my calculator? Where is my calculator? Well, that's bizarre. Ah. Right. So, blue, 742110 plus red, which is 575785 equals 317,895, and the result in our table is 317,985. That's success, I would say. But we could also return those values through a different method. Treat as, for instance, allows us to also return products that fall into blue and red in the product color category. And this may be an interesting time to do a performance check on which product color. So let's just check that treat as is doing what it should be doing. So treat as, so we put the information, so we're putting a list as our conditions in our treat as, and the table column that we're looking up against is the B underscore product color. That all looks good. So let's return on that. Check that we have the desired result. Oops. 317,895. So they are returning the correct values. So this is an interesting use case to do some server timing tests. So we can look to see if there's a difference between doing an equals product name, or equals another product name, or using the treat as function. So let's jump over to DAX Studio and we'll do a quick performance test to see which one is more efficient. So I'm in DAX Studio, and what do we want to do? We want to define a measure. How are we going to do this? Define a measure. Let's go back. Let's take a copy of this measure and go back to our DAX Studio. Now we're going to need to create a table, so we can do evaluate. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Evaluate, summarize. So we want to summarize on a dim date, month, year, want to summarize on our dim date month year. Sorry, we want to summarize our dim date table. And we want to return the columns for dim date month year. So let's just run that. We have an error. So why do we have an error? The syntax is incorrect. So just had to look up what I was doing wrong with this, and it's just the syntax around what we're calling the measure. So I'm referring to the measures table, and I'm going to call this measure. I'm going to call this M2. Or rather, I'm going to call it measure test. Doesn't matter. So, run the query. So we're returning all of our dates in our window down the bottom. So we're happy that this is at least returning our table. So we just want to replicate the table that we had from earlier. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this summarize with add columns. We're going to create a new column called net sales. Let's just call it net sales. And let's use our measure. So this is measure test. Close our add columns, see if this works. Okay, so it's returning data for the current year, which is great, but we want to get rid of these other years in this summarize column, summarize table here. So let's put a calculate table function around this dim date. And again, we want to return the current year. So I'm going to take a copy of this variable above. After evaluate starts here, I'm going to introduce a variable, same variable as before. Can't use that same variable because we've closed the block. So we're going to reintroduce that variable, return it here. So in the filter conditions for our calculate table on dim underscore date, we're only going to return the current year. So our dim date year is going to be equal to the current year. So I think that should work. Okay. That has only returned data for the current year, as you can see down here, which is great. So we have our code for treat as, which is returning the products which are blue and red. We're using a treat as function. So what are we doing here? We're testing the server times. We're seeing which one runs faster. This method using treat as, or using the other method where we're just saying one column equals this text value, this string value, or this column equals another string value. So I've turned on server timings. I'm going to run that query again. Let's jump over to our server timings, and here we can see it took a grand total of 7 milliseconds to return that information. So let's not lose sight of that. Let's put a comment after the treat as 7 milliseconds. And let's comment out treat as. Now let's apply the method that we used before. So what was it? B product color equals blue, or B product color equals red. Okay, so I think that's good. Should we run the query? Ooh, interesting. So that took a total of 3 milliseconds. So twice as fast. Three milliseconds. So just to make sure that wasn't a fluke, I'm going to rerun it. 3 milliseconds, rerun it again. 4 milliseconds. Okay. So I'm going to go back to our treat as. Comment out the other method. So I'm going to rerun this. 7 milliseconds, 7 milliseconds, 10 milliseconds. Oh, so we're getting an average of between 3 and 4, say 3.5 milliseconds on the one method. On the treat as, we're getting an average of say 8 or 9. I don't want to be unfair to it actually, because we only got 10 milliseconds come back. But still, our preferable method is the or statement and not treat as. So let's go back to our Power BI model. And sorry, treat as. It was nice knowing you, but you are going to be replaced with our or statement. There we go. Let's retype this out. Be product color equals blue, or B product color equals red. So we've run that code, everything's fine, and it's delivering the desired value down here. So what have we learned? What have we learned? what have we done? Rather, let's start with that. So what have we done? We created a SUMX function that took that calculated the net sales value over the current year. Applied that in a using the SUMX function against a table which was iterating over month and year. So that was pretty cool. But then we also applied an additional measure which took the sales from products that had two conditions that we wanted to return. So it was the product color by blue and by red. Returned the net sales value for products with those colors. And we did a performance test to see which method of returning those sales values against those colors, which was preference, quickest one, because the user experience is always paramount. So we use the code with the fastest timings, the fastest server timings, and that concludes our Let's Play. So thank you so much for watching. I had fun playing around with the SUMX function with some filter conditions. I hope you did too. I paused because I knocked my microphone. I hope you did too. So if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like on the video, or if there's any comments that you want to leave, any feedback, anything like that, I'm open to anything. It'd be really, really nice to hear from you. If you like what I'm doing and you want to see more of my content, you can subscribe to this channel. If you really, really like what I'm doing, you can go to my website. It's wolfman.uk, and on there you can buy me a coffee. Always appreciate people buying me a coffee. And yes, if you do follow me, you can follow me on social media as well. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. So you can search, you can find those socials on my website. And yes, see you in the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.